entire story of Christianity is the worship of the heavens. Like in the spring, as I said, when the Jews worship the sun passing over the equator, so they celebrate the Passover. Well, Christians have the same celebration. They call it Easter because the sun is a star, and so they call it the Star of the East. Well, that's when the sun comes up, the Star of the East, Eastern Star. But when the sun comes up, it has passed over for the Jews. But for Christians, they say the sun is resurrected. So for Christians, we say he has been resurrected, meaning he's come back to life. That's what the word spring means. He was dead in winter, but he's springing back to life. And so the Christians celebrate spring. And so, or the resurrection of God's Son, the light of the world. Well, of course the Son is the light of the world. The whole of Christianity is in fact a metaphor for the sun and its travels through our year.
Because if you haven't figured it out yet, Catholicism is the main character in the story of the world. Unfortunately, some of you are at a very dangerous point in your faith journey. You're at that pivotal stage when you're becoming more spiritual, coming out of your atheistic, agnostic darkness, but you're headed in the wrong direction. You saw some convincing videos online that say Jesus never historically existed. He's just a representation of the sun god, like pagans worshipped, and his story is just a myth based in solar symbolism. In other words, they believe the Son of God is really just the Son of God. I mean, the word does sound the same. Yeah, in English, not in ancient languages. I think some people have become so distrustful of Christians, thanks to some poor representations of the faith that are strategically and repeatedly blasted across your screens, that they are all too willing to believe in something, anything, that would attempt to undermine Christian beliefs. The Jesus Sun God argument usually proceeds as follows. Jesus is just a copy of previous solar deities like Apollo, Horus, Helios, etc. A dozen or so ancient gods all have the same story details. Born on December 25th, born of a virgin, walk on water, followed by 12 apostles, resurrected, etc. The reason that they all share these tropes is because it is based on this. The winter solstice, which is December 21st, is the shortest day of the year. For all intents and purposes, this day could be considered the death of the sun. The sun sits there at the lowest point in the sky for 3 days, before finally rising from the dead, so to speak, and the sun has its birth, or rebirth if you will, on December 25th. And at this time, in the sky, the 3 stars of Orion's belt point to the brightest star in the sky. This represents the 3 wise men and their journey to Bethlehem when Jesus was born. I know, it's all pretty convincing, right? Except it's not. None of what I said is biblical at all. So none of this actually undercuts Christianity in any way. Where in the Bible does it say that Jesus was born on December 25th? I'll wait. And where does it say that there were 3 wise men? There were 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But there could have been a dozen magi for all we know. And as for December 25th, and why Christians do celebrate Jesus' birth on that particular day, it is indeed an old pagan remnant. When Constantine ushered Christianity into the Roman Empire, he converted the festival of Sol Invictus to the day we celebrate the birth of Jesus. This was done in order to help Roman pagans transition to Catholicism a bit more easily, which is something that is not underhanded or some kind of bait and switch, but rather a faith-based act of evangelization. So remembering and honoring Jesus' birth on a day that used to be associated with the sun god does not hold within it some hidden agenda as much as it reveals Jesus' power to topple the gods of a previous age and subsume their role as the main point of worship. So you see, all the solar symbolism that seems so convincing is built upon false, which is to say, non-biblical premises. And as for saying that Jesus is just a copy of other ancient gods and his story has all the same characteristics, the problem with this argument is that it does not hold up to any serious investigation. I would invite you all to find any primary source about any of the ancient gods that Jesus is compared to and find anything even remotely mirroring the story of Christ. Any and all similarities between Jesus and previous gods do not hold up to serious scrutiny. For instance, Jesus is born to a virgin, which represents the fulfillment of a prophecy of Isaiah 700 years before his birth. According to all these, Jesus is really just the sun god videos. Mithras, who was also born on December 25th, is also said to be born of a virgin, when in reality, he was born from a rock. I guess technically a rock is a virgin. All these two stories share in common is that they are unnatural births, but that's a pretty broad point of comparison and is hardly worth mentioning at all. And you will find with enough research that this is how most, if not all, of these comparisons with Jesus are made. They are arguments made in bad faith. Quite literally. It is all too easy for some of you to get swept away in these anti-Christian conspiracy theories. One of the biggest perpetrators of such theories is this man right here. His name is Jordan Maxwell. He is a student of Manly P. Hall, the preeminent secret society scholar and occultist. As his hero before him, Maxwell too is amazingly diabolical in his delivery. He speaks as if he is telling you a secret that the people in charge don't want you to find out about. Jesus is really the sun god. It was a way for a Roman emperor to trick people. Today, that Roman power is the Vatican, and they are continuing the deceit. Insert eye roll here. Because if you haven't figured it out yet, Catholicism is the main character in the story of the world. Our God is different from any other God. Where every other religion of the past and present strives after God, striving vainly to reach for him, the Christian God comes down to us and meets us on our level. Our God took on flesh and dwelt among us. As atheist scholar Bart Ehrman declares, Jesus of Nazareth is one of the most attested to figures in history. Of course, Jesus was a real historical figure and not some sun god myth. But that's not to say that, not unlike the sun, he helps us to keep track of time. What do I mean by this? What year is it? 2024, that's right. And where do you think that number comes from? It represents when my God came down to earth and dwelt among us and changed the world as we know it forever. He was born 2,024 years ago. How much more of a sign do we need that our world revolves around Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world?